dancer, Inez and Duke, and I believe Johnny and Donnie were the names. And Donnie sticks out to me because she was so superstitious and she thought she was haunted and somebody put a spell on her. And if she found a feather around her door, honey, she was upset. But they all loved us and they took care of us as best they could, and I believe our family took care of them as best we could. Remember the best, and that brings up another thought I hadn't talked about, is that, of course, we didn't have running water, but we had a well, and it had a little housing, and it had boards that you walked on beside it and behind it and in front of it. The front of it was part of the porch. And what brought that to mind was the Best family had a daughter that one day she came up to get some water, or we were working in any way, she fainted. And it was right by the well, and found out, and I guess Mom and them pretty much had an idea she was pregnant, is what had happened. But that was the best water I've ever tasted. I still, when I think of the best water, that's it. It's wonderful, wonderful. And we had a pump, and the way, of course, we got our water was pumping that. And the way we were awakened in the mornings was first call, Mama or Daddy coming through, time to get up. And the second call, you have 5 minutes, and the third call was with some of that cold water. We could hear that pump. And when it hit that second time, honey, our feet started hitting the floor because we knew what was coming. They'd pour cold water right in your face, those that were still laying. So we did learn to get up pretty quickly. I think probably when I look at the relationships as I remember hearing about them, and of course all of it is from my perspective now, I don't believe Mom and Daddy were ever free. I think they married. It was just a thing to do. They were both of the age. Mama was in her 20s. She was 3 or 4 years older than Daddy. But anyway, have a picture of them that I think probably speaks loudly to their relationship. Daddy was not a happy camper in the picture. And Mama was kind of trying to smile, making the best out of, as Mama always could. She'd see a angry dog and said it's got pretty teeth. You know, she was that kind of person. I believe that we were taught a relationship of God. We were taught the relationship that we needed to have with adults, with the elderly. And I haven't talked about my grandmammy much, but I need to, because she was certainly a strong influence in our lives. But we were taught how to have relationships with one another, with school, with teachers, difference in the roles. I think what we never got was how to have a relationship with ourselves. It was almost, I can't get the word for it, but you certainly don't speak well of yourself. Everybody can speak well of you, but if you do, it's braggadocious and not good. And I certainly think that most of us never felt that good about ourselves as individuals. As a family, we were certainly highly respected in the community. And wherever you went, somebody would say, "You're one of the Carraways." So I think we all knew that we were Carraway more than we knew who we were individually. Mama used to have a saying, and it tickles me to death when I think of it now. She'd say, "Honey, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches." And when I think back at Daddy's drinking and womanizing, I wonder where our good name was. But we were respected in the community, and that didn't have too detrimental an effect, I would guess. But the teachings that they had were, I think, very honorable. And I didn't know where a lot of them came from until I started college and started reading the works of Tom Jefferson. And so many of it came from the family almanac. And when I started reading the sayings that he had in the almanac, you know, penny saved is a penny earned. I could go back and tell you 100 of them almost that I know came directly, because the almanac, and later on we got the daily paper, but that was about all we had to read. We didn't do much with school books because they had too much work to, but what we learned in the books, one of the unique things was Mama could always give us the right answer to something we were studying in school. And now Mama had a 6th grade education, which was about as far as they went in her day, unless you went on to college. But you could ask her something about science, something about geography or whatever, and she was an excellent speller, but she would give you the right answer. And later in life I asked Mom about that. Mom, how did you know that? She said, honey, when y'all went to bed, I read your books. So my mama was self-taught a lot, and I admire her a lot for doing that. Even in college, she could tell Verna a lot of times about things that Verna didn't think she had any idea about. Mama was a smart woman. Oh. I guess today I have certainly broadened a lot in my thinking and my beliefs. I have re-examined everything I've ever believed, and I've held on to the good and expanded in areas and thrown out some things. But all in all, I'm certainly proud of many of the things we were taught. And I said in Mama's obituary that I thought one of the greatest gifts in life was being her daughter, being born of her, and I still believe that. Her and Daddy's relationship, for the first few years, of course, the children started coming along pretty quickly. And I don't believe they ever had a lot of times just to be and just to play. And about the only thing they ever did, besides cooking breakfast together, they would go to a movie on Saturday afternoon. And I don't know whether that was always, but I remember them doing that a lot. Oh, they were certainly very caring about world events. Oh, I remember when we had the radio coming home from school, and Mama was always listening to a program called Portia Blake. And there were several, there was a soap opera. And sometimes she would be so sad and want to know what was going on, and somebody on the soap opera had a problem. But that, we listened to Amos and Andy. Of course, the news. The Lone Ranger. And what was that in the morning, that church group? The Lone Star Quartet. Lone Star, I hadn't thought of that in 100 years. But there were certain things that, and of course we couldn't listen to the radio too long because you had to save the battery. Oh. Think about those of you today, you would have no concept of what it was like with no running water, no electricity, being in a big family where there were a lot of food, something to wear, a lot of activities, never a dull moment. even in the wintertime. I'll get back to the games a moment. Remember how we used to make up games and make up ways of doing things differently. And I know one was that we would have put a little stick on a stick and walk on it. It was called Tom Walkers. I finally remembered. But you could get a high stick and put those little blocks on where you could stand and hold them and walk, wherever. And some of us are pretty good at that. I remember having a way of putting a ball on the end of a board, hitting it with the axe, and it would go sailing in the field and, catching the ball way out in the field. I remember the boys with tires, and I haven't mentioned the school bus, Wayne County 102. It was in the family, I think, about 20 years. Bob started driving, Ralph, Addie, Jay, Delbert, me, Jamie, and Burl, I believe, all drove that same school bus. I remember hearing one year the superintendent came out to let them know what route was going to be with the bus, and I'm certain he was in a hurry, so he just drove up in the yard and tooted the horn. And Jamie went out on the porch and looked at him and said, "We don't give curb service." He got out of the car and came in. But driving the school bus was quite a responsibility. And I want to tell you that when I got applied for a position in Raleigh with State Board of Education, when I told the director I was talking to that I drove a school bus, he said, "You're hired." So we never know what we do in life that's going to matter. He said a person who has that kind of responsibility was the kind of person he was looking, and I lasted 30 years, so I guess I did all right. In 1950 and 52, while Jay was away, Elder Pate was in our family. The church became more important by far than it had ever been. Mama joined. I joined. Later Daddy, Addie. Daddy, Addie, then I believe it was Delbert, then Bob, then Ralph. All became members. And there were a few wonderful years during that time. We had a lot of people to come to our home from afar off and would spend the night and visit every year about the same time, come to our association. And they'd want to come and stay with us. And why? It had to be because of love, because we didn't have running water, we didn't have electricity, we didn't have the comforts. And some of them were from very wealthy backgrounds. But when they came to our house, it didn't seem to matter that they had to use a little potty, and that pot had to be taken out in the mornings, and I can hear it squeaking right on, taken to the outhouse. And if you've never had an outhouse experience, you ought to find one and get it. And the outhouse that we had, of course, that's a small building over an empty hole, 6 to 8 feet. And you have a couple of little holes that you sit on. And I also want to tell you, back then we didn't have toilet paper. We had Sears catalog or corn cobs. And that's the way we cleaned ourselves after the experience. And I don't know if you're aware that my daddy sat down in the outhouse and a black widow spider bit him on his penis. And he was the sickest man I've ever seen. He rolled the beds hurting so bad, it was pathetic. And from that day till this, I'm scared to death of black widow spiders. But it was an awful experience. Oh, we might need to stop a minute. I'm losing thought of where I even started going. Gorgeous. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Very, very, very much. What haven't I covered?
Well, your grandma, you haven't talked a lot about her and her influence. And then I don't know if you want to talk a lot, like Jamie, Burl, Chris. We kind of have
Rehaville top.
The older, but not so much the younger, like Bob and Ralph and Bob and Berna, but not so much Ralph and Berna.
Okay. And trying to hit on all the topics that I could. Back as a child and growing up, one of the things I don't think I've mentioned is the way that we were punished. And there were several ways of doing that, one of which was talking. And most of the time when I look back, it was more shaming than